Today on Bulls Talk, the Bulls fall to the Atlanta Hawks. What happened in the second half of that game? We'll talk about that. We'll also take a look at how the playoff picture is shaping up, plus a little site news and a brand new contest. It's all coming at you harder than a Derrick Rose slam dunk. You know what time it is. Welcome to this somber edition of Bulls Talk on Pippen and Easy Radio Network. Bulls fall to the Hawks last night, 83-80. What to say about that game? It looked like it was going good the first half. The first quarter, Bulls jumped up to an early 10-0 lead. There was highlight slam dunks all over the place. Derrick Rose had a violent slam dunk in the first quarter. Joakim Noah had a slam dunk. Carlos Boozer had a one-handed slam dunk. It was just, the points were, and the highlights were just rolling in for the Bulls, and it looked like it was going to be a really good night. And then somewhere it got derailed. What has to be addressed firstly is that it is a road loss, and the Bulls are now 2-1 on this 5-game road stretch. Also, to have thought that the Bulls were going to go 5-0 on this road trip was a very naive thing to think, both for me, because I did think that, and for anybody else who was like me, who was caught up in the high of coming off that Heat win. To think that the Bulls were to go 5-0 in this road trip was a very naive thing to think. But it was not naive to think that they would be 3-0 at this point. Where those losses might come would have been against Orlando or possibly Miami at the end of the road trip. Not in the middle of it against the Atlanta Hawks. But that's where it came. That's where the first one came. But maybe this is a little sobering. It's a snap back to reality. So then they can get everything together, go out and play the Magic on Friday and then the Heat on Sunday. But talking about last night, 83-80, the Hawks pulling out against the Bulls. And like I said, the first half was just crazy. The Bulls jumped out to an early 10-0 lead. And actually, Derrick Rose had one of the most violent slam dunks that I've seen, not only of this season, but of him. It was in the first quarter, and he got it off a steal. He went down the court, and he didn't slam it in more than he jumped into the air, completely cocked his body back, and then slammed it forward. I mean, his knees were up, his feet were on his rear, and then he slams it in. Oh, it was just great. Here's actually the call on Fox Sports South, courtesy of the Atlanta Hawks Basketball Network.
Marvin really struggled with his shot on the road trip. Here's a deflection, and Rose picks it off. He'll take it up and in, and Chicago has a 10-0 lead.
With no regard for human life.
So that was that. And then there was another great play with Joakim Noah, where he was able to get a slam dunk into. Here's that call.
Come off a trip like the Hawks came off of without a chance to practice, and Noah stuffs it.
And then another impressive play involved Derrick Rose again, where he attempted a three, he missed it, got his own rebound, and slammed it right back in. I mean, he was at the top of the key. He shot it, it bounced back, he got it mid-bounce, and then jumped and slammed it in. I mean, he was just violent last night. Here's that call. Fox Sports South.
Rose, a pull-up three over Heinrich. Gets his own miss and stuffs it.
Oh, what explosiveness by Rose, my goodness. With no regard for human life.
And then with all this highlight action going on, there's Carlos Boozer. He decides he wants to get on the action too by throwing down a one-handed slam dunk of his own.
Starts the two-guard spot. Pick and roll with Boozer, and he takes it and flushes it.
That was a strong big man move to the basket. For human life.
Yes, absolutely a violent performance by the Dunkers last night. But that's not how you win basketball games, and clearly that was demonstrated last night. You can get all the beautiful, sexy plays, but if you can't close it out, which the Bulls are usually very good at doing, it's all going to be in vain. And the big turning point really wasn't until Atlanta started the third quarter on a 12-2 run. Over the first 5.5 minutes, 5-6 minutes of the half, And they held Chicago to 1 for 7 shooting. And they forced 6 turnovers. And the run cut a 17-point halftime lead by the Bulls to 7. And it just gave the Hawks absolute life. It just totally breathed life into that arena, into that team, and it was...
No!
It's usually the other way around. It's usually that happening to the Bulls, and it's really hard to watch it happen to the other team, and you be on the receiving end of the beatdown in the second half. But that was the case last night in Atlanta. So, and one of the big reasons that they are having this resurgence is the fact that they have a former Bull on the roster. Kirk Heinrich is now in Atlanta Hawk. He came over in the trade deadline. And it seems that he's given the defense life a little bit here. I mean, Heinrich played 31 minutes. He didn't do too good shooting. I mean, he only got 4 rebounds. But he had one of those turnovers. And the turnovers were killer last night for the Bulls. I mean, Marvin Williams had 2 steals. Al Horford had 2 steals. Joe Johnson had 2 steals. And Kirk Heinrich had a steal. Of the 5 starters for the Atlanta Hawks, only Jason Collins didn't have a steal. Everybody else had a steal. And then on the bench, Jamal Crawford had a steal. He had 2 steals. Jeff Teague, he had a steal. So, they're all over the place. And then on the Bulls side, they can't muster up turnover to save their lives. I mean, Luol Deng had one, but I mean, he's on fire. And that's almost expected at this point. And then you got Derrick Rose with a steal and Joakim Noah with a steal. And Ronnie Brewer coming off the bench, and Taj Gibson had a steal too. But they weren't nearly as crucial as the Hawks, because compared to starters, the Bulls starters had 4 steals, compared to the Hawks starters, who had 7 steals. Just the starters alone. So that right there is a huge statistic as to why the Bulls lost. Top performers last night, Joakim Noah had 13 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, that steal, and he also had a block. But the real difference maker was Al Horford for the Atlanta Hawks. He was the top performer of the game. Both teams, top performer. 31 points, 16 rebounds, 2 assists and 2 steals. I mean, he's that monster that the Bulls usually find. I mean, like Luol Deng was that guy at the Heat game, and then there's Joakim Noah is usually that guy down there gobbling up the rebounds. Al Horford was those 2 guys meshed into one player last night. 41 minutes on the court for Horford. He was insane. 31 points, 16 rebounds right there. That double-double. Those numbers killed the Bulls. So the Bulls are 41-18, and they're not quite back to 500 on the road yet because they had some cushion with those 2 straight road wins. They're 15-14 on the road. Don't have to worry about the Hawks too much right now. They're still 37-24. I mean, they're a little bit back there. They're still 5th in the East. But I mean, judging by what happens tonight with the Heat and the Magic, because the Heat Magic play. I mean, Atlanta, if they start playing the way that they were playing last night against the Bulls, they're going to start climbing a little bit. I mean, they can leapfrog Orlando, and if Chicago can't get things together against teams like the Hawks, Atlanta could possibly leapfrog Chicago. So, I mean, that's really far off because Atlanta is 8 games back of the Celtics. I mean, they're 37-24. But if last night was any indication how the Hawks are going to start to play, this Eastern Conference is really good. Boston, Miami, Chicago, Orlando. Now Atlanta is actually in those talks. And, of course, the Knicks, who were already kind of back there, but, I mean, they're starting to climb. I mean, Carmelo Anthony, Amari Stoudemire, Chauncey Billups. You have Eastern Conference. We're going to see some shakeups here. I mean, there's still the month of March to play and then a little bit of April. Things are going to start getting locked up, but it's going to be really interesting to see how everything plays out, especially with all the time that's left. There is a lot of time for big-time shakeups in the Eastern Conference. And a lot of those games are happening right now in clusters. I mean, you had the Bulls and the Hawks last night, which was kind of a minor thing, because the Bulls are 3, but they're climbing, and the Hawks are 5, but they're climbing. And then tonight is the Heat and the Magic, which is a big game. And then tomorrow night is Bulls Magic, and then the Heat and the Spurs play tomorrow night too. It's an ESPN doubleheader, so you can watch the Bulls and the Magic at 7 Eastern, 6 in Chicago. And you can also watch it with Pippen Ain't Easy on Cover It Live, but we'll get to that later. And then after that, you can watch Heat Spurs, and that'll also be a Cover It Live event here too, because starting now, it's really, you know how like in football there's the first like 10 weeks is really just weeding out the teams that are going to do absolutely nothing, and then you got your whole cluster teams that actually have a chance, and then starting like week 11, every single game is really starting to count. It's like, it's right about there, NBA timeline. Because right about now, every single game is really starting to count, especially with everybody so close in the Eastern Conference. With plenty of time and about like 5-6 games separating every single team here, you have very intense games and you have very meaningful games that are going on all through the month of March. So it's really crunch time right here. We're getting down to the grind, and it's really going to weed out who is going to be in, who is going to be out, where everybody's going to go. I mean, Miami's a game and a half behind Boston. Chicago's 3 games behind Boston. Orlando's 6 games behind Boston. Atlanta's 8 games behind Boston. There's a maximum of 8 games separating those teams, with Atlanta being 8 games back of Boston. And then everybody in between, you know, the big stats in the standings are who's behind Boston, but what you don't see are the little numbers in between, where how many games back Miami is Chicago, you know, how many games the Magic have on the Hawks. There's all these little numbers in them that nobody really pays a lot of attention to until, you know, somebody gets leapfrogged. And it's awesome. And it's going to be one hell of a ride into the playoffs. I mean, Bulls are in, but we want that 1 seed. And that's what we're going for right now. And that's something that hasn't been this close to in a long, long time. A little bit of site news then, and then we're going to get out of here. We got the Cover It Live. The first time we're going to try this is going to be on Friday. The Bulls and the Magic. That game's at 6 o'clock. What you're going to do is you're going to come on to Pippen Ain't Easy. There's going to be a post up there with a little entry. And it's basically like live blogging for the game. So you can come in there, you can talk about it, discuss it with other fans, with writers, with us. It's going to be a good time. And then we're also going to try it again right after that with the Heat and the Spurs, because that's also a big game. So trying to catch some ground there. So that's also going to be a Cover It Live. And then we're also going to do the Sunday game against the Heat is also going to be a Cover It Live. Basically, if it's nationally televised, if we can get everybody involved in it, it's going to be a Cover It Live event. Also, part of the Cover It Live is contests. We're going to have some new contests. Chi-Town Clothing is going to be the giver-awayer of the t-shirts this time. They're based in Illinois, and it's all Chicago stuff. So, I mean, if you're a big-time Chicago guy, so, I mean, your teams are the Bulls, the Hawks, the Cubs, the White Sox. One of those two, not both. We all know that. You know, the Bears. Go to this site. It's Chi-Town Clothing. It's absolutely awesome. They have some of the coolest shirts. They're totally original, and we're going to be giving away some of them. Part of the Cover It Live, you know. Come to the Cover It Live. Get into the conversations, you know. It's kind of like when you were in class and you get points for participation. Here you get a t-shirt this time. It's better than points for participation. I mean, some of their shirts are, they're Derrick Rose shirts, a big cap, or a big lowercase D. And where the whole of the D is, it's a rose, for D Rose. I mean, stuff like that. The Lou Dang shirt's red, and it says, dang, he's good, but it's D-E-N-G. Nice little play on words right there. Plus, it's a cool shirt. It's red with white and black lettering that covers up the whole shirt. I mean, they're really cool. ChiTownClothing.com is the place to go for all of your Bulls or Chicago, or if you're just a sportsman, if you want. You know, you got Michael Jordan shirts. You want a Brian Scalabrine shirt? I mean, where else are you going to find that? Nowhere except Chi-Town Clothing. So they're the place to go for all of your Bull needs, all of your Chicago needs, you know, Hawks, Sox, Cubs, Bears, anything you want, Chi-Town Clothing. And they're going to be the ones that are giving us the shirts to give away. And so we're going to put up the pictures of the shirts we'll be giving away. And then, I mean, it's not going to be every single Cover It Live, and we're not really going to tell you which one it is. You just kind of got to be there, and it's, all right, there it goes. So a couple of the Cover It Lives will be giving away t-shirts. We may have other stuff to give away, so come to the Cover It Lives. We'll be watching the Bulls with other Bulls fans all over the place. Writers at Pippen Ain't Easy. Everybody. It's going to be a great time. T-shirts, giveaways. Bulls are going to win. It's going to be great. So that's going to do it for Bulls Talk today. We'll come back at you tomorrow with some previews of the Bulls Magic game. Stuff like that we're talking about tomorrow on Bulls Talk. We'll catch you later.